I always imagined that if my world ever collapsed, it would be because of something dramatic, an accident, a tragedy, an act of God. Something sudden and obvious. Something you could see coming, or at least feel in your bones before it hit. But it wasn't like that. My world didn't come crashing down with screams or explosions. It came quietly on a Thursday afternoon with a letter. Just a plain, unassuming white envelope, like the kind you get from the electric company or jury duty. No markings, no logo, no return address. It didn't even have my full name, just Richard scribbled in smudged ink. I pulled it out of the mailbox like it was nothing. Just another errand on a routine day. The sun was out. Birds were chirping. The dog next door barked like always. My life felt normal. Until it didn't. I opened the envelope standing barefoot in the kitchen, a cup of lukewarm coffee in one hand, and that letter in the other. Just 5 words. Ask your wife about Victor. That's it. No context. No threat. No signature. Not even punctuation. But those 5 words hit like a freight train. I read them again. Then again. I stood there, frozen, for a full 2 minutes before the meaning began to sink in. My chest tightened. My stomach flipped. I had to sit down. The room didn't spin exactly, but it tilted. Like gravity had shifted, and I couldn't trust the ground anymore. Victor. It was a name. That's all. A name I didn't recognize. But something about it, maybe the way it was so casually presented, or the certainty with which it was written, gnawed at me. Because this wasn't just a prank. This was personal. I'd been married to Linda for 24 years. Nearly half my life. She'd been my first serious girlfriend. We'd met in college, got married in our mid-20s, had our daughter Emily when we were 30. We'd built a life together. Not perfect, but ours. We'd had our share of fights, some ugly, some stupid. She hated that I left my socks on the floor. I hated that she never fully closed drawers. She wanted to travel more. I wanted to retire early. But we were us. A team. Through illness, through job losses, through raising a teenage daughter and watching her become a brilliant young woman, we were solid. Or so I thought. Now this little note was casting a shadow over every moment I'd ever cherished. Was Victor someone from her past? A colleague? A friend? Or worse, was he something else entirely? I must have read that paper 30 times. My hands started to shake. Not from fear. From adrenaline. From the creeping sense that I had missed something obvious. Something terrible. I sat at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, replaying the last 2 decades like a movie in fast forward. Her business trips. Her late-night phone calls. The just going out with the girls excuses. The time she said, "You're paranoid," and I believed her. I believed her. The front door creaked open. I looked up. Linda walked in, wearing her usual blue work jacket, grocery bag slung over her shoulder. She smiled. "Hey, honey. You wouldn't believe how long the line was at the store." I slid the letter across the table. She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes dropped to the paper. She read it. Just once. And in that single second, I knew. There wasn't shock on her face. There wasn't confusion. There wasn't a laugh, or a joke, or a frown that said, "What the hell is this?" There was fear. Pure. Reflexive. Gut-deep fear. And that's all I needed. I didn't yell. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I just asked, in a voice I barely recognized, "Who is Victor?" She hesitated. That hesitation told me more than any confession ever could. When she finally spoke, it wasn't with denial. It wasn't with outrage. It was a single, useless question. "Where did you get that?" And just like that, my heart broke. Because if your first instinct is to ask how I found out, not what I'm talking about, then the truth is already dead and buried. And maybe, so is the marriage. Silence sat between us like a third person at the table, louder than any shouting match ever could have been. Linda's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Her hand trembled as she set the grocery bag down, a carton of eggs slipping sideways and cracking open inside. She didn't notice. Neither did I. I just kept staring at her, trying to recognize the woman in front of me. Trying to reconcile the person I thought I knew with the one now unraveling in real time, piece by piece. "Please," I said, my voice low and cracking, "tell me who he is." She pulled out a chair, sat slowly, like gravity had doubled, and folded her hands together. "I never meant for this to happen," she whispered. My chest clenched. "I need you to be honest," I said. "All of it." She nodded, then looked me straight in the eyes. And what she said next took the last fragile piece of my trust and crushed it. Victor and I, we were together once. A long time ago. Before we were married. That was her opening line. Safe. Neutral. I said nothing, letting the silence pressure her into truth. It didn't stop after the wedding, she admitted. It should have. But it didn't. I gripped the edge of the table. What do you mean? Her voice barely rose above a whisper. We continued. Off and on. Sometimes for months. Sometimes we'd stop. But he'd always come back. And I let him. I felt like the room shrank by half. You cheated on me, I said. Yes, she breathed. For years. How many years? Linda stared at the wood grain in the table like it would open a hole to escape through. All of them. That word hit harder than anything before. All of them. 24 years. Every anniversary. Every birthday. Every holiday. Every laugh. Every hug. Every kiss. Tainted. I pushed my chair back, stood up, paced the kitchen like a man walking through fire, trying not to scream. I gave you everything, I said, voice shaking. I worked 2 jobs so we could buy this house. I stayed up all night when Emily was sick. I took care of your mother when she was dying. God, Linda, I loved you. I know, she sobbed. I know. And that's what makes it worse. I turned on her. Then why? Why keep coming back to him? She covered her face with her hands. I don't know. He was something I never let go of. A mistake I kept repeating. I was weak. I was selfish. No, I said coldly. You were calculated. You built a double life and let me pay the emotional mortgage. Tears poured down her cheeks now. It was never about not loving you. I did love you. I do. But I kept lying. And every time I tried to stop, I was already in too deep. You had a choice every single day, I said, pointing at her. And every day, you chose him. I thought I could live with it. I thought if I buried it deep enough, it would disappear. But secrets rot, I said. They don't disappear. They grow mold in the walls. We sat there, 2 strangers in a house filled with memories that no longer felt real. Then came the question I was afraid to ask. Does Emily know? Linda froze. The look on her face twisted into something between panic and guilt. And suddenly, the weight in my chest doubled. Is she mine? That's when she completely broke. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She just started sobbing uncontrollably. And that silence, that was my answer. I staggered back, the breath gone from my lungs. Emily, my daughter, my whole world, my reason for every sacrifice, every long workday, every night I came home and let the weight of life rest because I knew she was upstairs, safe and loved. And now, maybe she wasn't even mine. The human mind has a strange way of defending itself. When you're hit with something too big, too heavy, it doesn't break all at once. It fractures slowly, quietly, like a glacier splitting beneath the surface, waiting for the inevitable collapse. That was me. After Linda's confession, I couldn't speak. I couldn't scream. I couldn't cry. I just existed. I slept in the guest room that night. Not that I really slept. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan turning in circles, listening to the hum of a house that suddenly didn't feel like home. I thought about Emily. Memories poured in, uninvited and cruel. Holding her tiny hand for the first time. Teaching her how to ride a bike. Her kindergarten graduation. Her first heartbreak. The nights I stayed up late helping her with essays, math homework, science projects. The way she used to run into my arms like I was her entire universe. And now? Now I wasn't sure if I was even in her universe at all. The next morning, I went to the pharmacy and bought a DNA kit. I told Linda nothing. I told Emily even less. She was 21, home for the summer between internships. Full of ambition. So much like me it hurt. That made it worse. We watched a movie together that night, something funny. I laughed out loud because she laughed. But inside, I felt like a ghost. Later, when she went to bed, I knocked softly on her door. Hey, Em, I said, trying to sound casual. I'm doing one of those ancestry DNA things. Thought it'd be fun to see our roots. Want to take one too? She smiled. Sure. That sounds cool. She didn't suspect a thing. The sample went out the next day. I spent the next 2 weeks living in purgatory. Linda tiptoed around the house, cooking dinners no one touched. She tried talking to me once, maybe twice. I gave her nothing but silence. How do you speak to someone who murdered 24 years of your life and buried it under your own roof? How do you look at someone who watched you raise a child with full knowledge that you might not be her father and never said a word? Every time I looked at her now, I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger wearing her face. The results came back on a Monday morning. I remember the sky was gray. I remember because I looked up before I opened the email and thought, fitting. My hands shook as I clicked the message. And then I saw it. Not a paternal match. I sat there, staring at those 4 words until the screen blurred. Not a paternal match. Not mine. Emily wasn't mine. And just like that, something inside me died. It wasn't rage that came first. It wasn't sadness either. It was emptiness. Like I'd been hollowed out in a single moment, everything I ever was as a father, erased with one clinical phrase on a glowing screen. All those memories, all those sacrifices, all those moments, they didn't belong to me anymore. They were borrowed. Stolen, maybe. I walked into the kitchen and found Linda standing at the sink, rinsing a coffee mug. She turned around and saw my face. And she knew. I didn't have to say a word. She opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. Don't, I said. Tears welled in her eyes. I wanted to tell you so many times, she whispered. But you didn't, I said, voice cold. Because the lie was easier than the fallout. I thought it didn't matter. You were her father in every way that counts. I slammed my fist against the counter. Except in the one that's real. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. But sorry couldn't rebuild what she'd shattered. I didn't wait. I packed a bag. I left. Not just the house, but the life we built together. And as I drove away, the only thing louder than my heartbeat was the single, suffocating question echoing in my mind. Who am I now, if I'm not a husband, and not even a father? For 3 days, I stayed in a cheap motel just off the highway. The kind with flickering neon signs and scratchy sheets that smell like bleach and loneliness. I didn't go to work. I didn't answer calls. I just stared at the wall, trying to decide if I should tell her. Emily, my daughter. The girl who called me dad with pure trust in her eyes. The one who texted me memes in the middle of the day. The one who asked me how to negotiate her first raise. Who told me I was her role model. Who once wrote me a Father's Day card that said, "You're the reason I believe good men exist." And now I had to ask myself the most horrifying question I'd ever faced. Do I tell her the truth and rip that belief apart? I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face and heard that single clinical line in my head again. Not a paternal match. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove back. The house was quiet when I arrived. Linda was gone, probably out pretending to live a life she no longer deserved. Emily was in the living room, legs curled under her, reading. She looked up and gasped. Dad, where were you? I've been texting. Mom said something about a fight, but... She stood and came toward me with open arms. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't move. I just stood there, looking at her, this perfect, innocent girl who thought the man in front of her was her father. I hugged her, harder than I ever had. Dad, are you okay? She asked softly. I stepped back and nodded. We need to talk. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Linda had lied to me. I looked at her for a long time, and finally, I spoke. There's something you need to know, and it's going to hurt, but I don't want to lie to you. Her face paled. What's going on? I breathed in, then out. I'm not your biological father. The words dropped like a bomb. She blinked. What do you mean? I pushed the printed DNA results across the table. She stared at them, then back at me. You did a test? I nodded. Why? Her voice cracked. Because someone sent me a letter, I said quietly. They told me to ask your mother about a man named Victor. And everything unraveled from there. She went silent. I never knew, I said. Not until 2 weeks ago. Tears filled her eyes. But you raised me. I know. You were there for everything. I know. You were my dad. And that broke me. I want to be, I said. But I didn't want you to live a lie. She stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. She knew. Her voice trembled. Mom knew this whole time? Yes. Emily stumbled back, covering her mouth. I need air, she whispered. She ran out the front door, and I let her go. I didn't chase her. Sometimes people need space to bleed before they can begin to heal. That night, I sat alone in the dark house. I didn't know if I had made the right choice. I didn't know if she'd ever come back. All I knew was that truth had a cost, and I had finally paid it. Around midnight, the door creaked open. Emily stepped in. Her eyes were red, her face hollow. But she walked to me, slow and sure. She sat beside me on the couch and said nothing for a while. Then softly, You're still the only dad I'll ever want. And that was when I wept. For all I'd lost. And for what? Against all odds. I might still get to keep. After Emily found out the truth, everything changed, but not in the way I feared. She was quiet for days. Detached. But she didn't pull away completely. We went on walks. We shared silence. We both needed time to process that the world we knew wasn't the one we lived in. But slowly, piece by piece, something remarkable happened. She stayed. She still called me Dad. And in her eyes, I began to see something I thought I'd lost forever: respect. Not for the man who raised her in ignorance, but for the man who told her the truth, even when it hurt like hell. Linda, on the other hand, couldn't look me in the eye. She tried to explain. She cried. She begged. But her words were tired echoes in a burned-down house. She had lied every day for 24 years. She watched me dedicate my life to a daughter she knew wasn't mine, without ever once stepping forward, not even in weakness, not even in guilt. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. I didn't do it to hurt her. I did it to save myself. And the day the papers were signed, she sat across from me, trembling, her makeup running down her face. "I never wanted to lose you," she whispered. "You lost me," I said softly, "the moment you chose silence over honesty." She nodded. She didn't argue. And I think that was the first real truth she'd spoken in years. After that, she moved in with her sister across town. Emily chose to stay with me through the summer before heading back to school. The mornings became quiet again, but not empty. Different. Purposeful. I learned how to live with the grief. How to hold the memories without letting them poison me. I began therapy. I took long walks. I forgave myself for not seeing it sooner. And Emily? She called every day. Some nights she'd send old photos, ones from camping trips, piano recitals, high school graduations, and add one simple message: still my dad. And maybe that's what this whole journey taught me. Fatherhood isn't made of DNA. It's made of choices. Of 3 a.m. fevers and scraped knees. Of showing up when it matters and staying when it's hard. Of telling the truth, even when it shatters everything. So yes, I lost a marriage. I lost the illusion of a life I thought I knew. But in return, I found something real. My daughter. Myself. And the man I had to become when the lies fell away.